I'm tired of putting up a front. I'm tired of pretending that everything is perfect. Today, I want to talk to you about my least favorite things from some of my very most favorite games. Number one is going to be Mythic Mischief, the abstract chess-like game from IV Studios that I played one time and immediately fell in love. I've since played it multiple times again and again and adore it each and every time, but it is not perfect. No, it is not at all. There are many faults that I have with this game, none of which really detract from my enjoyment of the game, but I want you to know, I don't think it's perfect. The biggest issue, single biggest issue I have with Mythic Mischief is analysis paralysis. Now, this is going to be an issue with certain game groups and not an issue at all with others, or with certain factions and not with others. In fact, we actually purchased a chess clock to eventually do a gameplay of Mythic Mischief, but forcing us to use a chess clock and keeping the time of the game in mind. Because one of the best and worst things about this game is how each and every turn can really be thought thoroughly through. And that is a very satisfying feeling. I love sitting there and thinking through my turns and really piecing out every which way that this can go, ultimately to try and find the best way to go about it. That being said, that's not always fun, right? Especially not for the other person. If I'm sitting there trying to plan out this turn for 5 minutes, that's 5 minutes the other person is sitting there on their phone. The problem with Mythic Mischief is when someone else is taking their turn, you can't really plan out yours at the same time because the board state is going to be wildly different then compared to what it is now. It's not like a worker placement where you can say, okay, if he takes this one spot that I want to go, I will instead go here. It just doesn't work that way. And ultimately, it can lead to some games taking a very long time and some players having very long turns. It's one reason why I think Mythic Mischief would make an incredible app-based game, because there's no worry for AP in that place. Just play asynchronously like we do with Root, and you are good to go. Skill gap, or skill parity, is oftentimes a thing, especially in abstract and chess-like games, of which Mythic Mischief very much is. It's one of those things where if one player is vastly superior to the other as far as game knowledge and experience and strategy, it's almost difficult to play because it can just feel honestly hard as the more skilled player to tone it down when you are so used to doing things one way. And it just makes it to where an experienced player introducing it to an inexperienced player might not have the greatest time. Anticlimactic endings. That's right, this game is exciting and incredible, but there are times where the game ends in just an abrupt and anticlimactic fashion that leads both parties feeling, okay, all right. And this isn't the only game that I love to experience this. In fact, Spirit Island, I think one of its chief complaints is that it can lead to anticlimactic endings, where the players are just mathing it out, and one player may think that they have a way to contribute, but the other player's like, oh no, I can do it all by myself, and we'll get it there. And that's great in some ways, and it's not so great in others. In this, you can have a game where you think you might have another turn, and you're actively planning that out, or attempting to, and then the other player's like, oh, if I do this and this, yep, I got it. And you're like, are you sure? Can you show me? And they show, and you're like, yeah, you did. You got it. All right, good game. And it's just, when that happens, it just sours it. And not immensely so. Not so much that I immediately hate it, that I'm like, I'm sorry, that wasn't fun, I know. I still have a good time, but those anticlimactic endings certainly take it down a peg. They turn it down from what it could and should be. Yes, storage. Now you're looking at this and thinking, what is wrong with storage? This is a perfectly acceptable storage solution. Well, I don't have the Headmaster Pledge, but I do have 3 expansions for it. Now, if I had the Headmaster Pledge, these would all fit in a slightly bigger box, but I don't. And so I have 3 expansions just always hanging out, always hanging around. These are new factions. I do want them, but it is a bit unfortunate that I have to have 4 boxes here to hold it all. Now this one I have been gushing about for a long time now. If you've watched any of the recaps or discussions in the past couple of months, you know that I fell head over heels, deeply in love with Dune Imperium. That said, it is not a perfect game. And although I still think it is one of my favorite games of all time, I'm not going to spoil its ranking. In fact, I don't know where it ranks. I will say it has its faults, and maybe this can help you decide whether it's a game that you need to give a try or not. The first thing that I don't love about Dune Imperium, which is a worker placement deck builder hybrid, is the lack of market refresh. Now, this has been addressed in several variants that you yourself can use and decide to play with. It has also been addressed in the newest expansion, Immortality, in which they give you a token to refresh the entire card market. We've also been playing with what we're referring to, and the internet refers to as Sandworm Eats Cards, in which the final card of the Imperium Road is basically eaten by the sandworm and cycled out each round. This gives you a little bit more market activity and allows you to see more of the deck throughout the game, because one of the biggest things for me is just enjoying seeing what's out there, seeing what I can get. Do I need to try and get more currency to purchase those cards this turn? Are there any cards that I don't really care about? And if it didn't cycle so much, I would be remiss having not seen more cards than I could have. And I really enjoy seeing what the game has to offer, and I'm excited about playing Immortality with its new aspect that allows you to cycle the whole market row. I think that might even improve it more. Now, I don't want to speak too much to this because I honestly am not qualified to do so. But most people say that Dune Imperium requires Rise of Ix. And I am someone who has played this game 5 times, and I've only ever played with Rise of Ix. So I have no experience, none whatsoever, with the base game. I cannot say whether my enjoyment would have been worse or just the same or improved upon playing the expansion. But if it's me, I'm not playing the base game. I love Ix. I'm not going to go back and play it normal. Same goes with Immortality. I'm excited to add that into the game, and I think, haven't played it yet, I think that when I have it, I'll probably just include Ix and Immortality and play the full game. So I don't want to speak too much to this because I could be wrong and I am not qualified to say as much. But most people say that it requires an expansion to be a great game and is merely a good game as itself with the core box, meaning you're sitting here spending $80, $90 on a board game to be great. I think it's worth it, but you might not. One of the main complaints you see from Dune Imperium is because of the way that this worker placement and deck building works, in which you require a card with a particular symbol on it to go to a location. In 4-player games especially, and in the early rounds, it is theoretically possible to get locked out from placing a character at all. You may not be able to place an agent on the board whatsoever. If you're going last and you drew your cards that only allow you to go to blue and yellow, and then the early spot blues and yellows were taken and you don't have the water or the spice or whatever to visit the harder spots, you're just done for and you're revealing right away. And I can see where that would be absolutely sucky, unfortunate. I would hate to have experienced that. Now, that being said, I've never seen this happen. I've only played this game at 2 and 3. I've only ever played it with the Ix expansion, and I've never been locked out turn 1, nor has it happened to anyone at the table. But it is an issue that you should know about. I do think that the expansions add in additional starting cards to your hands that kind of give that a bit more leeway, but it is something to be aware of and probably would suck. Even though it hasn't happened to me, I don't want to entirely step over that and skip over that. And lastly, a lot of people don't really care for luck. Now, me personally, I love a bit of luck in my game. I love that not everything is known and mathematical. And I like when people have cards in their hands and you aren't sure what they can do and aren't sure what they are. And that is where the intrigue cards come into play. These cards right here are a powerful resource that you can acquire throughout Dune Imperium, but not all intrigue cards are made equal. For example, here we have this intrigue card that gives you 2 Solari? Money. 2 money. Sounds okay, right? And it is. It's perfectly okay. It might be extremely helpful in the early rounds, getting you your 3rd worker, your 3rd agent, or a seat at the High Council, but ultimately, it's probably not going to swing the game all that much. And then we have these 2 in my hand. Corner the market. If you have at least 2 Spice Must Flow, victory point at the end of the game. If you have more Spice Must Flow than each opponent, another victory point. This could be 2 victory points if you have just 2 Spice Must Flow and no one else grabbed any others. That's big. And then you have this one here. 3 influence or more on 3 faction tracks, victory point. 3 influence or more on 4 faction tracks, 2 victory points. That's another 2 victory point thing. And honestly, you almost always, not guaranteed, almost always want to be getting 2 influence on every faction track. So that's just 1 more influence per faction track for 2 victory points. And that seems pretty wild. So I can see if you do not like randomness at all, that can absolutely stink, and I imagine sour your thoughts on the game. For me personally, I like that. I like that you don't know what people have. I like that you can't race to 10 and immediately guarantee victory. You race to 10 and trigger end game, but just because you're the first person to 10 does not mean that you are going to be the victor. And I love that tension that it adds. Personally, for me, it's a boon. I enjoy it, but if you are not someone who enjoys any kind of luck in your game whatsoever, you're probably not going to enjoy those intrigue cards either. Yes, last but not least, we have the big one, the big boy, Blood on the Clock Tower. I have gushed and loved on this game for months in a row now. It has shot into my top 10, much like Dune Imperium, and I absolutely adore this game, whether playing online or in person. I love, love, love Blood on the Clock Tower, and I want to play with you. If you want to play Blood on the Clock Tower, join our Discord, link in the description. Lately, we've not played as much, but we had been playing 1 game a week or every 2 weeks, and I want to get back to that. So if you're looking to play Blood on the Clock Tower, join the Discord, let us know, we'll get you the right role, and we'll play some games. But for now, maybe you don't know much about this game. You can go find an old video about how much I love it and all the great things about it. But I'm going to tell you about what is wrong with it and why it's not perfect, much as it pains me to say so. This is pretty obvious, right? This is pretty obvious. Every social deduction game requires a large player count. This one may even more than normal, however. This game plays anywhere from 5 to 20, but I would say it really plays best from 8 to 12. Now, I'm not discounting those lower counts and high player counts entirely. I've played it at 6. I had a great time. I don't think I've played it at 15 yet or more, but I think I would have a great time. It would just be absolute chaos. But I think in general, you're going to want to try and get at least 8 people every play. If you only get 7, 6, or 5, you're probably still going to have fun, but I would love to play at 8 or more every time I play this game, and that is a hard ask. That's a tough task these days. To get that many people together in person, or heck, online for that matter, that's difficult, and definitely something that shouldn't be considered lightly if you think that you can play and own and get to the table Blood on the Clock Tower. This one is a bit weird to talk about, but it does have its hits and misses. This is a game that has some of the highest highs and some low lows and anything in between. I've had games of this that have lasted 2 hours and I've loved every second of it. I've also had games of this that have lasted 30 minutes and we're like, wow, what the heck was that? I mean, it's funny, but we didn't really figure a lot out. And then you have games that are the polar opposites. They last 30 minutes, it's amazing. They last 90 minutes and you're like, I didn't really learn anything. And ultimately, because of the fact that the storyteller is basically generating a script and then just randomly drawing stuff, based off the way things are drawn, sometimes it can get muddy and sometimes it doesn't end up working that well. You can also just have people that aren't comfortable with their roles. And it's one of these games that when you sit down to play, you really need to commit with your friends around you that you're going to have a good time and you're going to experiment with this game. It may not work out to be an amazing time every time, but you know that it's there and that as long as you and your friends try, you will have a good time. It just may take you a moment to figure it out and appreciate it, but I adore this game and I've never had a bad time with it. I've just had games that were like, that was good, and also games that were like, that was incredible. Some of the best game experiences I've ever had. It's ranged from a 6 to a 12 out of 10. I love it so much. I think you should give it a try regardless. Now, I mentioned that every player gets a role, and some roles are greater than others. They are not all created equal, and some people may be turned off by that fact. Someone may want to feel uber powerful, like the Slayer, who can point his crossbow at someone, shoot, and perhaps win the game just on his own, with that shot on their own, just pointing the crossbow, firing and shooting, they might win. Other times, you're an outsider who is negatively impacting the town. And that's not great, right? You could be the saint, or you could be the recluse who actively appears evil even though you're not. Or you could be the chef who learns a 0, 1, or 2 at the beginning of the game, and it's pretty helpful, but that's all you're gonna get throughout the game. Or, worst, you could be someone powerful, like the Undertaker or the Empath, and die before you ever get to use your ability. I guess that's technically impossible with the Empath, but whatever. You could be poisoned night 1. Say you're the Undertaker. You have a very powerful ability, but you're randomly taken out night 1. That can take the wind out of your sails, and now you feel useless. But I promise you that you're not. This is a different game than other social deduction games, and it's important to know that your usefulness does not come strictly from your ability. And your ability to manipulate and win the game and deduce the puzzle is not because of your ability. It's because of you. And I think that that is something that people just need to figure out. If you jump into your first game and immediately are killed, you may just turn off. You may just say, okay, we'll run it back, but this game, I'm useless. And you're not. You're not at all. It's just one of those things that you need to figure out. And that comes with experience, especially on the rolls. Or as a dead person, there are things that you can do. You can be the listener. You can be active. You can be silent in the shadows, just paying attention to everything going on around you, and still be an active participant in Blood on the Clock Tower. And I think that's one of those things that whenever I play with new people, I want to make abundantly clear is that just because you're killed or just because you get a bad ability does not mean that you're not playing the same game. It may feel different and weird, but you got to figure it out, and I totally think that you can. But that's just one of those things that it might not feel good to you, and it might make you feel less about the game if it happens to you. One of the big draws and amazing things about Blood on the Clock Tower is the fact that they have a storyteller or a dungeon master, a game master, who is there to kind of walk you through the game and have some small but meaningful influences on the game. However, if your storyteller is not very good, or if you are just someone who absolutely hates the fact that they have any influence whatsoever, they can cause you to not enjoy the game. If a storyteller is playing the game for their enjoyment, they're doing it wrong. If they're just trying to cause the utmost chaos possible each and every time they have a decision to make, they're not thinking about the group and the better of the group and how much fun the group can have. And ultimately, that's what my goal is to get the game to be tense and last a while and make people to have fun. It's not for me to play God and influence the game in every which way I can. But if someone is like that, I can see where you wouldn't have a good time. Or if you don't want me to have any impact, maybe this isn't the game for you. Someone like the mayor is a role who, when targeted, they can bounce the kill. So say the demon targets Draco, who's the mayor. I, the storyteller, am given the decision. Do I kill Draco, or do I bounce that kill to Remy, or to Luna, or Granger? Any of that. I can choose how I want to handle that situation. And if you don't like that, you need to figure that out and see if it's something you're willing to overlook or not. And lastly, one of the biggest faults with Blood on the Clock Tower is it's not widely available and it is very expensive. This is a $150 social deduction game, and you can't just grab it more often than not at your friendly local game store or at Target or anything like that. This might be something that you have to specifically order directly from Pandemonium Institute, wait a couple of weeks, and again, it costs a lot and it's a big game. Look, Draco's always in the way, and I can cover him up entirely just with a box of Blood on the Clock Tower. It's massive and it's expensive and it's hard to get a hold of, but I think if nothing that I said absolutely turned you away from this game and you have any interest whatsoever, I think you owe it to yourself to check out this video in the corner right here, see what I have to say about it, and see if you think it's for you, and give it a try. Even if you don't want to buy the game physically, come play it with us online. We'd love to have you. These are the worst things about my favorite games. We'll see you next time. Have a good one.